Hello everyone, friends, this is part 2, support me with a like and a comment, have a nice day.
A few months into our relationship, we were on a road trip to a nearby town.
Noah and I had been planning it for weeks.
Just a weekend getaway, nothing big, just a chance to escape from the routine.
Everything was going smoothly until we got to the cabin.
I don't know why, but something in me snapped when we were unpacking. It was like all the insecurities I'd buried started bubbling up to the surface. We were sitting on the couch, Noah flipping through a magazine while I stared out the window, lost in thought. I don't know what triggered it, maybe it was the way he smiled at me, or the fact that he was so relaxed when I felt like I was falling apart, but I suddenly felt this overwhelming rush of anxiety.
I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't good enough for him.
I turned to him, my voice tight.
You don't think I'm a mess, do you? He looked at me, confused. What? Where's this coming from?
You know, all the stuff I've done, I continued, almost desperately.
The way I've been with people.
How I screwed up with Lily.
And Zara. How I can't seem to ever get it right.
Noah sat up, setting the magazine down.
Emily, I'm not here to judge you for your past. Everyone makes mistakes. I'm not here because you're perfect. I'm here because I like who you are now, and I want to be with you. I shook my head. But you don't know everything. You don't know how messed up I really am. His face softened, but there was something almost sad about it. That's not the point. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to just be yourself, okay? But the words didn't reach me.
My anxiety flared up, and I snapped.
I am myself.
I'm just too much for anyone to handle.
The tension between us grew. Noah tried to calm me down, but I couldn't let go of that gnawing feeling. You don't get it, Noah.
You don't know how hard it is to not feel like a mess all the time.
Emily, stop. You're not a mess.
But if you keep thinking you are, you'll make this whole thing harder than it needs to be, he said, his voice firm but still caring.
But I couldn't help myself.
I stood up, walking out of the room, feeling this weight in my chest.
The fight wasn't about him.
It was about me, my own fears, my own insecurities.
But at that moment, I wasn't ready to admit that. It was the first time we'd ever fought like that. And in a way, it scared me. Because it felt like I was standing on the edge of something, and if I didn't pull myself together, I might lose him too. But that wasn't the last time. And somehow, I knew it wouldn't be. After that fight, things were never quite the same. We still saw each other, still talked, but there was this shift. A wall had been put up, even if it was just a small crack. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt myself pulling back. Noah was trying, but I wasn't letting him in like I used to. I couldn't. I was scared.
The next few weeks felt like walking on eggshells. Every time we talked, I was waiting for him to mention the fight. And when he didn't, it was like this giant, unspoken thing between us.
I hated it. I hated how I felt.
But I hated more the idea of losing him, so I pretended everything was fine. But pretending only works for so long. It happened on one of those quiet nights when the world felt like it was holding its breath. We were sitting on the couch in my living room, my head resting on his shoulder, watching some movie that neither of us were really paying attention to. I could tell he was thinking about something, his mind elsewhere.
Finally, he spoke. Emily, we need to talk. That phrase. We need to talk.
The words alone sent a chill down my spine. I sat up, trying to act like I wasn't already bracing for the worst. I know we've been distant, he said slowly, and I want to know if there's something I'm doing wrong.
I don't want you to shut me out. But it feels like you're pulling away. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to admit it, but he was right.
I'd been pulling away, building up walls because I didn't know how to handle the fear of losing him. But saying that out loud felt like admitting I was weak, like I wasn't capable of having a healthy relationship.
I'm not pulling away, I said, though my voice trembled. I'm just figuring things out. Noah's gaze softened. You don't have to do that alone, Emily. We've been through a lot together. But if you're pushing me away, I can't help you figure it out. I want to be here for you." And there it was. The reminder that Noah cared. That he wasn't like the others who'd hurt me. But it didn't make the fear of being vulnerable any easier. "I'm scared," I whispered. "Scared that I'll mess this up. Scared that I'll mess you up." Noah didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at me. And then he pulled me into a hug. A real one. Not the kind where you're just hugging out of obligation, but the kind where you feel like you're holding on to someone for dear life. Like they're the only thing keeping you grounded. "You won't mess it up, Emily," he said softly. "But you have to let me in, okay?" I didn't know what to say. I wanted to. I really did. But the fear still gripped me. It was like every time I tried to let go of the past, it came back to haunt me. "Okay," I said finally, my voice shaky. "I'll try." We didn't fix everything right there. It wasn't some magical moment where everything clicked. But for the first time, I felt like maybe I could start healing. Maybe I could finally trust someone without fear. Maybe we could make it through. But things, as I'd learned before, don't always go the way you hope. Things didn't get worse immediately after that talk, but the tension was still there. I could feel it in the way Noah looked at me sometimes, like he was waiting for me to open up, to tell him what was really going on in my head. I didn't know how. I wasn't ready to be fully honest about the way I felt. It wasn't just about him or our relationship, it was about me, and everything I'd buried for so long. And then, the worst possible thing happened. I found out I was pregnant. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even something I had been prepared for. Noah and I hadn't talked about it at all, and I wasn't even sure what we were, honestly. I wasn't ready to be a parent. I wasn't ready to make any big decisions. When I told him, his reaction was a mix of shock and something else. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was confusion, but I could see that same pressure in his eyes, the pressure that had been there ever since I started pulling away. "I didn't expect this," Noah said quietly. He ran a hand through his hair, looking both frustrated and uncertain. "Emily, what do we do?" I could hear the fear in his voice. It wasn't just my problem anymore. But I didn't know what to say. "I don't know," I replied. I'm not ready for this. I wasn't planning on this. And neither of us were ready for the pressure that would come with this. The decision that we'd have to make. The future we weren't prepared for. We spent the next few weeks in a haze. The pregnancy news hit us like a ton of bricks, and everything else seemed to fall to the wayside. But through all the uncertainty, Noah was there. He said he was willing to support me, no matter what. And maybe that's why, despite all the chaos, I felt like we could get through it together. But deep down, I knew the decision wasn't simple. We were both so young, and neither of us had everything figured out. I was scared of what becoming parents would mean for us. One day, Noah and I went out for a walk, just to get some air. We didn't talk much, just walked side by side, lost in our own thoughts. As we were walking back toward the car, I heard someone calling my name. I turned to see my older brother, Jason, and a couple of his friends standing by the road. "Hey, Em. What's up?" he called, waving. I smiled awkwardly, not wanting to bring up what was happening in my life. But Noah's face changed as soon as he saw them. Jason had always been the protective older brother, and I could tell he wasn't thrilled to see Noah with me. Not that I blamed him, to be honest. Noah stood up a little straighter, as if preparing for something. Jason didn't even look at him, he only had eyes for me. "You okay?" Jason asked, his tone serious. And that was when it hit me, the last thing I needed was for everything to spiral. But no matter how much I wanted to push it all away, it was real. This was happening. The pressure from the pregnancy, the fight with Noah, the tension with my family, it all started piling up. I couldn't breathe. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. I couldn't handle it. I wasn't strong enough.
I tried to focus on the fact that Noah had stuck by me, that he wanted to help. But with every passing day, I felt more disconnected. The more he tried to support me, the more I wanted to push him away. I started distancing myself, retreating into my own head, afraid that if I let him in too much, he'd see just how broken I really was. The moment things started to unravel happened one night. Noah and I had been fighting more often, small things that didn't seem like much at first, but they added up. Every time he mentioned the baby, every time he tried to talk about our future, it felt like the weight of the world was pressing down on me. I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I ever would be. One night, after another heated argument, I left the house without saying a word. I just needed space, I needed air, I needed to escape. I ended up walking for hours through the streets, the cold night air biting into my skin. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to run. When I finally returned, I found Noah sitting in the living room, waiting for me. He looked exhausted, like he'd been awake the whole time, worried. "Emily," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Where did you go?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My head was spinning. My emotions were tangled, and I didn't know how to untangle them. All I knew was that I felt suffocated by everything. He stood up slowly, walking toward me. "We need to talk. About this, about us, about everything." "I can't do this anymore, Noah," I blurted out, my voice shaking. "I can't keep pretending that everything's fine. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. I'm not ready for this baby. I'm not ready for us. I'm not even ready for me." Noah froze, his face paling as if I'd slapped him. His eyes softened, hurt flickering across his face. "Emily, we'll figure this out together. We can." "No," I cut him off, my voice louder than I intended. "I don't want to figure it out anymore. I'm too messed up, Noah. You don't deserve this. You deserve someone who can give you what you need. I can't be that person. I'm not strong enough for any of this. I never was." He stared at me, his face frozen in disbelief. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The silence between us was thick, like we were both trying to understand what had just happened. And then, as if on cue, the tears came. My body shook with the weight of everything I'd been holding in. I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to stop it. Noah finally stepped toward me, reaching for me, but I pulled back. "Please," I said, barely able to speak through the sobs. "I can't do this with you anymore." For the first time, I saw the desperation in his eyes. "Emily, please. Don't push me away. We can get through this together." But I couldn't hear him anymore. I couldn't. I couldn't keep lying to myself or to him. It wasn't about us anymore. It was about me and how broken I was. How scared I was. Noah stood there for a moment, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Then he just walked away. That night, we ended it. The next few weeks were a blur. After everything went down, I found myself spiraling deeper into that dark place I'd been trying to avoid for so long. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't talk to anyone. Noah was gone, and I was alone again. I tried to keep the pregnancy a secret for as long as I could. But eventually, I had to tell my parents. The conversation was just as awkward as you'd expect. My mom cried. My dad was angry. They both wanted to know how I was going to handle this, what my plan was. But I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I couldn't do it. I couldn't handle the pressure. I couldn't handle everything I'd already lost. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, making the decision to end the pregnancy. It wasn't something I took lightly. But after weeks of stress and confusion, I realized that I wasn't ready to be a mother. I couldn't bring a child into a world where I couldn't even take care of myself. I needed to find a way to heal. And I knew that meant making a painful choice. I never told Noah. I couldn't bring myself to. We hadn't spoken in weeks, and I didn't think he'd ever understand.
A few months later, I ran into Noah at the local grocery store.
It had been months, but seeing him there, standing in front of me, took my breath away.
We didn't say much at first. Just stood there, awkwardly. But then, finally, he spoke.
"How are you?" he asked, his voice low and careful.
"I'm getting by," I said.
I wanted to tell him everything, but I couldn't.
I was still too broken.
"I heard about the baby," he said quietly.
"I heard you decided to end it." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. His face softened, and for a second, I thought maybe we could start over. Maybe he'd forgive me for everything. Maybe we could find a way back to each other. But that wasn't how it worked. It wasn't that simple. Noah looked at me one last time, his eyes filled with a kind of sadness I couldn't describe.
"I hope you find what you're looking for, Emily," he said, and with that, he turned and walked away.
I never saw him again.
The next few years were a blur.
I tried to put my life back together.
I worked on myself, spent time with family, and tried to heal.
I never really forgave myself for the decisions I made, for the way I pushed Noah away. But I tried to move on. I never forgot him, though. Never. Years later, I received a message from Noah.
He had gotten married, had kids, built a life. He told me he never blamed me for anything.
He understood why I did what I did.
But the message ended with one line that I never expected.
"I never stopped loving you, Emily. And I never will."
And then, not long after, I heard that he had passed away in a car accident.
That message was the last thing I ever got from him. Looking back now, I know the truth. The tragedy wasn't that I lost him.
The tragedy was that I never gave him the chance to truly love me the way he wanted to. And I never gave myself the chance to love him fully, without fear.
Life is strange. You never know how much time you have to make things right. And sometimes, the pain is a reminder that we can never go back.
I hope wherever Noah is, he's found peace. I hope he knows that I loved him too.
Even if I didn't always show it.
Thank you very much for watching. Please support me by subscribing, liking and of course commenting. See you next videos.